I'm Madison Wolfram, and I'm going to be presenting on the effects of caffeine on mental performance and cognitive functions and the Yerkes-Dodson law. Caffeine in relation to our world. So today's world is pretty busy and people get tired out pretty quickly. So coffee kind of seems to be a necessity for people, and there's a lot of people that will have a cup of coffee in the morning because it helps to get them going. Helps them to feel more awake, but in addition to that, it also has some psychological benefits that we're going to cover in this presentation. In relation to psychology class, caffeine is a drug that stimulates the body, and this stimulation arouses the body, which connects it to the arousal theory that we covered in class. It also connects it to the Yerkes-Dodson law then, because caffeine affects mental performances, cognitive processes, and motivation. And if you have too much caffeine, then it's going to make you aroused more, which will play into the Yerkes-Dodson law that we will revisit shortly. So, the article that I chose to cover is called Caffeine Containing Adaptogenic Rich Drink Modulates the Effects of Caffeine on Mental Performance and Cognitive Parameters, a double-blinded, placebo-controlled randomized trial. The authors are Ali Boulani, Daniel T. Fuller, Simona Mondale, Tyler Wilkinson, Costel C. Derry, Eric Gumprecht, and the purpose of this study was to compare the acute effects of an E plus shot, a naturally sourced caffeine and adaptogenic rich energy shot, to a placebo, as well as a caffeinated active comparator regarding various mental performance and cognitive activities in young adults. So, the background for the study is that, they basically just explained stuff about caffeine. So, worldwide, caffeine is one of the most consumed psychoactive substances. Acute consumption of caffeine allows for psychostimulatory benefits, including enhanced cognition, task performance, sustained attention, and improvements in logical reasoning, manual dexterity, visual reaction, and working memory. However, there are some negative side effects as well, and these include elevated blood pressure, increased anxiety, an increased risk of osteoporosis, sleep interference, and withdrawal symptoms. And some of these withdrawal symptoms could be like drowsiness, fatigue, or headaches. And then we have some background information on adaptogenes. So in the 1940s, there were Russian researchers that decided to study the adaptogenic plants. However, as of recently, they've been going further scientific studies. They've been shown to exert anti-fatigue activity, improve mental work capacity, and modify cellular stress responses. And they are also beginning to be used in energy shots. So we're going to dig into the research and see what the study found. So, first of all, we need to understand the methods that they used to get to their conclusions and to find the results. So, the experiment was a placebo controlled, double blinded, within participants, randomized crossover study. The independent variables that they used were the E plus energy shot, the placebo beverage, and the caffeine active comparator. So those are the three beverages that they gave to the participants that they controlled. And then the dependent variables were the measured blood pressure, the heart rate, the fine motor control, and the mental function scores. So when they chose participants, they ended up with 30 overall, 17 of which were women and 13 of which were men. They recruited from university classes that were pretty large and contained more than 30 people. They also put announcements on bulletin boards and electronic listservs. They also put up flyers at local small businesses, and then they also just kind of spread the news by word of mouth to gain participants. And this occurred through the 16th of September 2015 to the 9th of August 2016. So potential participants were invited to complete a screening questionnaire regarding diet, medical history, and mood that would allow the researchers to decide if they would be a fit for their study or not. If they were under 18 years old, over 45 years old, high caffeine consumers, high polyphenol consumers, taking prescription or over the counter medications, possibly pregnant, having a condition from a list that they set out, or taking nutritional supplements, they were excluded from the study. Then they also had physical testing and self ratings that they used. So they used saliva samples to estimate the link between caffeine and changes in blood pressure, cognitive task performance, fine motor performance, heart rate, and mood. They also had a scale from 1 to 10 where they would get the participants to rate their motivation to perform the cognitive tasks. They also used the profile of mood survey short form, which was used to assess the participants' moods through a 5-point scale system regarding anxiety or tension, anger, confusion, depression, fatigue, and vigor. Mental and physical state and trait energy and fatigue skills were also used for participants to rate both their mental and physical energy as well as their fatigue through a 3-part scale. Blood pressure was measured by a digital blood pressure monitor, and they also measured heart rate by a pulse oximeter. They also used cognitive activity tasks. So one of these that they used were the serial 3 and serial 7 subtraction tasks. So over 2 minutes, they would have participants continually subtract either by threes or by sevens from a random number that would be either between 800 or 999, where they would get the participants to type their answer into the computer as quickly and as accurately as possible. Then there was the continuous performance task, and this also lasted about 2 minutes. They got participants to be shown a continuous series of letters, and they had to hit the left key on the keypad when they saw an A followed by an X. And there were 48 targets that were shown throughout the duration of this task, and they were just shown randomly. Um, there was the rapid visual input processing task. So this one actually lasted over 16, or it actually lasted 16 minutes. Participants were shown a continuous series of numbers and had to identify them consecutive, either even or odd. So if they saw three different odd numbers consecutively, they would have to press the right key. Or if they saw like the odd numbers, then they would also have to do the same. And there were 32 of these presented. And then they also had to be alert for a specific number that they would be told, where they would press the left key, and this was presented 96 times throughout this task. Then there was the 9-hole peg test, where a wooden pegboard with 9 holes was placed in front of the participants. Then the pegs were placed either at the right or left hand, depending on which one was being tested. Then they had the participant put all the pegs into the board as fast as they could before removing them. And each of their hands were like, they would get them to repeat it twice for each side. Then, this is another method that they used, was having the participants come for a familiarization day. So the participants were asked to go to the lab to complete a trial run of all the tasks so that they would reduce the experimental error. This data was not included because it was just a trial run. Then there were 3 test days where the beverages would be administered and the order was randomly assigned. If participants reported either 2 hours more or less than the usual amount of sleep, they would be rescheduled for a different day for the test day. There was a minimum of 48 hours between each test day for the participants. After they arrived to the lab for testing, they would take a survey that would question their sleep the previous night and their beverage, drug, and food consumption over the past 24 hours to determine if they were eligible to be tested for that day. And then this is just kind of showing like the tasks that they had to perform and just kind of like the sequence of that. So then we get to the results of the study. The caffeine group showed after 30 minutes after consumption that there were improvements in cognitive measures, mental energy, and vigor. However, this improvement began to taper out at the 69 and 108-minute marks. Other improvements seen were decreased levels of confusion and increased percentage of the RVIP secondary task answers correct. The placebo group experienced 30 minutes after consumption a decrease in feelings of vigor, systolic blood pressure levels, the percentage of correctly answered RVIP secondary task questions, and correctly answered CPT questions. Additionally, there were increased levels of confusion with the placebo group. The E plus shot group, they experienced an increase in functions more gradually than the caffeine group. This improvement continued to improve at the 68 and 108-minute marks. This was found to be the same in the systolic and diastolic blood pressure levels as well. So the conclusion from the findings is that clearly the caffeine and the E plus shots had more beneficial and significant effects on the participants and their cognitive functions than the placebo. While caffeine's impact was seen more instantaneously, the E plus shots effect were more gradual, but they lasted for longer. So now we're going to retouch on the Yerkes-Dodson law. So this law states that arousal may enhance performance up to a certain degree before it becomes detrimental to performance beyond that certain point. So if you are aroused and you are doing something that is more difficult, it's going to be harder than if you have lower arousal levels. But if you're doing something simple, you will want more arousal because that will help you out more. So the link between the study and the Yerkes-Dodson law is because caffeine arouses the body. And the caffeine and the E plus shot were both stimulating substances used in the study. So the Yerkes-Dodson law can explain the effects and kind of like why they had that effect on the cognitive performances. The participants that received the caffeinated beverage and E plus shots experienced a higher level of arousal than those who received the placebo beverage. This heightened level of arousal increased the cognitive performance of the participants, while those who took the placebo did not experience an increase in arousal, and therefore their cognitive performances did not appear to be enhanced. So, the way that we can apply this information to our lives is because everybody needs to focus. So, if people are having a hard time focusing and they consume caffeine, it can help them to both perform better and focus better. However, it should be kept in mind that too much caffeine or stimulation will become detrimental to one's cognitive performance. So you need to be careful when consuming caffeine for this purpose. Additionally, as adaptogenic plants become more popular and used in energy drinks, they're becoming available as an alternative to caffeine, and they also have similar effects, although they're more gradual. Like the arousal is more gradual and it lasts a bit longer, as seen in this study. So it is worth considering if you're going to be taking caffeine to try to help you focus better. And these are the sources that I used. And thank you for watching.